Every day, millions of people drive past road barriers without a second thought. But what if I told you those plain-looking structures quietly prevent up to 90% of crossover collisions and increase overall road safety by more than 50%? So, how do they work? Let's take a closer look. Before today's standards existed, roads were unforgiving. Drivers who veered off course were met with steep drop-offs, trees, light poles, or oncoming traffic with nothing in between. There were no second chances and mistakes turned deadly fast. As vehicles got faster and road networks expanded, crashes became more frequent, especially on curves, bridges, and narrow shoulders. Early barriers were basic and harsh, solid concrete blocks or heavy steel beams bolted in place to block vehicles entirely. They were designed to stop, not protect. In some cases, these barriers caused cars to flip, launch them back into traffic, or pierce through cabins, turning a crash into something far worse. Collisions with these early systems were often as dangerous as the hazards they were meant to guard against. It wasn't until crash patterns were studied in detail that safety planners began to question what those barriers were really doing and who they were truly built for. When engineers started looking closer, they realized stopping a car was only part of the solution. What really counted was what happened to the people inside after a crash. If a barrier remained intact but the people inside the car were badly hurt, the system had failed. That realization forced a complete rethink. Engineers stopped building barriers like solid walls and started treating them like tools for managing crashes. The goal was to slow a vehicle down without making things worse. That meant guiding it safely away from danger and easing the blow for anyone inside. A barrier's strength still mattered, but so did the way it moved. What once seemed rigid and fixed had become flexible and responsive under pressure. Barriers were no longer static blocks. They became active safety components, built to absorb the hit and buy drivers just enough time to walk away.
And the cable anchor provides tension, which allows the rail to remain intact and safely redirect the vehicle.
At the heart of every modern barrier is a simple idea. Systems save lives, not parts. What looks like a single rail is actually a carefully arranged sequence of components working together under stress. The main beam is shaped to bend without tearing, while the vertical posts are spaced and anchored to allow movement during impact. Spacer blocks create distance from the post to prevent snagging and reduce rotation. At each end, flared or curved terminals guide vehicles away from sharp edges and blunt ends. None of these features exist in isolation. When a vehicle hits, the system responds as one, absorbing force, redirecting motion, and slowing everything down just enough to reduce the harm. Different situations call for different tools, and barrier types are chosen based on what each crash might look like. On most highways, steel W-beam guardrails are the standard. They're designed to flex on impact and guide vehicles back into the lane. In high-risk zones like bridges or narrow medians, concrete barriers are more common. These are heavier and built to deflect, especially in areas where space is tight and redirection is critical. Wire rope systems, made of tensioned steel cables, are used in wide-open areas like grassy medians. They look light, but their ability to absorb energy while preventing crossovers makes them one of the most effective options for high-speed zones. Each type has a role, and each one is chosen with the crash in mind. A barrier's effectiveness depends not just on what it's made of, but where and how it's placed. Engineers consider the slope of the land, the distance from the roadway, the expected speed of vehicles, and even the type of terrain beyond the road's edge. If a barrier is angled too steeply into traffic or placed too close to a hazard, it can become a launch pad instead of a safeguard. The installation has to allow space for the system to deform and for the vehicle to ride along its surface instead of piercing through or bouncing back. End treatments are tapered and buried when possible, slopes are reshaped, and clearance zones are maintained so that a mistake doesn't turn into a catastrophe. Every inch matters, and every decision is guided by the physics of what happens in the worst-case scenario. When everything works as designed, a high-speed crash might barely register from inside the vehicle. But even the best designs can only do their job if they're properly maintained. A bent rail, loose post, or rusted anchor might not look like much, but during a high-speed crash, small flaws can lead to serious consequences. Even small problems like a missing bolt, a weakened post, or a cracked base can make a barrier fail when it's needed most. Weather takes its toll, and so does time. That's why inspection crews are out constantly, driving long stretches to check what's holding up and what isn't. Some setups now have sensors that send alerts after a hit, so no damage goes unnoticed for long. It's a behind-the-scenes effort, but it's what's keeping the system trustworthy. Because if a barrier fails once, it might not get a second chance to save someone's life. In some places, better design has taken a step further. Sweden, for example, have made changes based on real crash data, adjusting layouts and materials as new patterns emerge. Cities are using softer outer layers in high-traffic spots to protect cyclists and pedestrians, not just drivers. On narrow mountain roads or sharp curves, you'll find hybrid systems, concrete at the base, steel or cables above, to reduce the chance of rollovers or direct hits. These systems are built with local risks in mind, based on the types of crashes that actually happen. It's all about responding to what's real, not just what's possible. Different countries approach highway safety in their own way. In places like Germany and the Netherlands, barriers are installed consistently and according to national policies that leave little to chance. Most roads there have guardrails or crash cushions wherever data shows recurring risks, and upgrades are handled as part of a long-term infrastructure plan. In the US, it's less uniform. Each state manages its own highway system, and that means decisions about where to install or upgrade barriers can depend on budget, traffic studies, or recent incidents. In some areas, coverage is dense. In others, it's limited to high-speed zones or sharp curves. Local practices reflect broader ideas about how safety fits into road design, and those decisions have consequences. Environmental factors are now shaping the way barrier systems are built. Engineers are starting to use low-carbon concrete, recycled plastics, and rubber composites to reduce waste during production and over time. In busy areas, noise reduction is also part of the equation, with newer barriers including absorbent layers that help quiet passing traffic. Modular parts are another change. Instead of rebuilding entire stretches, damaged sections can be removed and replaced quickly, which lowers repair costs and keeps traffic moving. Movable median barriers, for example, add flexibility to modular systems, enabling quick adjustments without major reconstruction.
In 2015, we installed a movable median barrier, which improved the safety of the bridge by physically separating northbound and southbound traffic.
Additionally, crews now use lighter materials that speed up installation and make the job safer, especially in places where shutting down the whole road isn't an option. The push is about building smarter systems that hold up over time. Highway barriers are part of the road's foundation, installed long before most drivers ever need them. Every piece reflects a choice made from years of crash data, engineering tests, and careful planning. Location, material, and spacing follow detailed guidelines that account for the road's layout, speed limits, and the kinds of vehicles expected to pass through. These systems work because someone studied what could happen and acted before it did. It's not chance that makes a road safer, it's preparation. And every time a driver walks away from a collision, it's proof that planning made all the difference.